It wasn't that long ago that France was more than just a country. It was a true economic powerhouse. I mean, the French middle class was living a life that was literally the envy of the world. But something happened. That dream, it started to crumble. So let's dig into how it all went wrong.
And I'm not exaggerating. Back in the 60s and 70s, this was the real deal. That joy of living was something you could actually feel. You had this booming consumer society, a mandatory 4 weeks of paid vacation. Can you imagine? And a top-tier education system that basically promised you a great life, no matter where you started from.
And look, this amazing lifestyle wasn't just built on thin air. It was backed by some serious industrial muscle. France was at the absolute forefront of technology. We're talking about co-building the Concorde, launching Airbus. I mean, they were defining what global luxury even meant. Their innovations were literally shaping the future.
And the crazy part? The speed of this growth was just staggering. Just get your head around this. Between 1960 and 1980, the income for the average person in France shot up 12-fold. 12! It was, without a doubt, a genuine economic miracle.
But fast forward to today, and, well, that miracle feels like a lifetime ago. The headlines today tell a completely different story, right? We see soaring national debt, unemployment that just won't budge, and constant protests in the streets. It's gotten so bad that 1 in 3 people in France now say they can't afford to eat 3 healthy meals a day. Just let that sink in. So you have to ask the big question, how on earth did this happen? What choices, what wrong turns transformed that economic dream into the difficult reality France is living today? Well, that's exactly what we're about to unpack.
All right, so our story really kicks off at a major fork in the road. We have to go back to the 1970s, when a huge global crisis hit, and it forced France and its neighbor, Germany, to make a decision that would basically set them on 2 completely different paths for decades to come.
So what was this crisis? Well, in 1973, because of the Yom Kippur War, oil-producing nations decided to jack up the price of oil. And I mean, they really jacked it up. From about $3 a barrel to $12. That's a 300% price hike practically overnight. It sent massive shockwaves through the entire world economy, and both France and Germany got hit hard.
So here's the thing. Both countries are staring down the exact same problem, but their solutions, they couldn't have been more different. Okay, so Germany went one way. They chose what's called wage restraint. Basically, workers agreed to take pay raises that were less than inflation, all to help keep businesses competitive. But France? Oh, they did the opposite. They had this law, a sliding scale of wages, which automatically tied wages to inflation. The goal was to protect people's spending power. And on top of that, France just started printing money like there was no tomorrow, while Germany was way more cautious about it.
Okay, to really get what this meant in the real world, let's use a simple analogy. Imagine you're making a coffee maker, right? Before this whole crisis, let's say it cost you $50 to produce one. In Germany, with their wage restraint, the cost to make that same coffee maker goes up, but only to about $65. But now look at France. With those automatic wage hikes kicking in, that same coffee maker now costs $75 to produce. See the difference?
And the result of this one decision? It was absolutely massive. By 1977, just a few years later, France, a country that used to sell more than it bought, was suddenly running a trade deficit of almost $3 billion. And Germany? They became an export juggernaut with a surplus of over $19 billion. Why? Because their stuff was cheaper and the world was buying it.
All right, so that was round 1. The next big test for both countries comes a few decades later. A new challenge appears on the horizon: the rise of China as a global manufacturing powerhouse. And you guessed it, France and Germany find themselves at another crossroads. So believe it or not, by the early 2000s, it was Germany that was in trouble. Their economy was stagnant, unemployment was high, they were actually being called the sick man of Europe. So Germany decided it was time to take some pretty bitter medicine to fix things.
And once again, the paths they chose were completely different. So what was Germany's bitter medicine? Well, they cut unemployment benefits to push people back to work. They made part-time jobs easier to create, and again, workers agreed to really small pay raises. France, they went in the exact opposite direction. They actually shortened the work week to just 35 hours for the same pay, and they made it a legal nightmare for companies to let anyone go. We're talking judges awarding fired employees up to 4 years' salary. Crazy, right?
So, what was the bottom line? A huge gap in how much things cost to make. By 2008, if you wanted to build something in France, it was a full 18% more expensive than making the exact same product just across the border in Germany.
And when you look at the long-term consequences of this, they are just staggering. Check this out. Between the year 2000 and 2016, German industry grew by 25%. But French industrial output, it actually shrank by 3%. France was literally losing its factories while Germany was building more.
Okay, so this brings us to the final major turning point, the 2008 global financial crisis. And this is where the fundamental difference in how these two countries think becomes crystal clear. And honestly, the best way to think about it is through a metaphor, taking painkillers versus actually training.
So, after the 2008 crisis, interest rates around the world plummeted, and Germany saw an opportunity. They implemented this thing called the Black Zero policy. What did it do? It put a strict cap on government spending. And all the money they saved from those low interest rates, they used it to aggressively pay down their national debt. This was the training part. They were building up their long-term financial strength.
Now, this quote from our source material just perfectly sums up the French approach. France is like an athlete who takes painkillers instead of training. Eventually, the painkillers stop working and the body collapses. See? Instead of taking the hit and getting stronger, the French government just decided to numb the pain with massive amounts of spending. Basically, they whipped out the national credit card to pretend everything was okay.
And what did these painkillers look like in real life? Well, you're talking about 75 billion euros just to cap electricity bills. Another 17 billion in tax cuts and bonuses after some protests. A whopping 35 billion to pay private companies' salaries during the pandemic. When you add it all up, it's a staggering 150 to 200 billion euros in pure government handouts.
So here we are. After decades of making these choices, the painkillers are finally starting to wear off. And the bill, well, the bill is coming due. So what are the big lessons we can pull from this whole saga?
So this is where France is at today. The national debt is now over 100% of their entire GDP. That means they owe more than their entire economy produces in a year. Youth unemployment? It's stuck near a painful 19%. And their pension system is basically a ticking time bomb, with only about 1.7 workers paying in for every single person taking money out. It's just not sustainable.
So, looking back at the fall of the French dream, there are 3 really powerful lessons here. Lesson number 1, taking some short-term pain is almost always better than racking up long-term debt. Lesson 2, good long-term policies are often unpopular, and if you choose to just please people in the moment instead of building a resilient economy, you're setting yourself up for disaster. And finally, lesson 3, a strategy built on freebies and handouts might win you some votes, but it is the absolute worst way to build a strong nation.
And that really brings us to the core dilemma, doesn't it? At every single fork in the road, France chose the path that protected its people from immediate pain. It shielded them from the harsh realities of the global economy. And the difficult question that leaves us all with is that short-term comfort really worth the price of a slow, steady, long-term decline?